First up is The Running Man. This is an Edgar Wright film, and it's an adaptation of the 1982 novel by Stephen King. Now, this has already been adapted into a film once before in 1987, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. And if you want to feel really old, the Arnold Schwarzenegger version is set in the dystopian far-off future of 2017. So obviously the 2025 version pushes things a little further into the future, but man, Stephen King really knew what he was talking about, and I almost wish he hadn't been as prescient as he is, because between this and The Long Walk, I'm like, what if he were to manifest a positive future? Like, wouldn't that be nice? Anyway, The Running Man takes place in a dystopian future that doesn't actually feel that different from the world we live in now, but resources are very scarce. America has basically become a police state, and they are running the media as well, and they run a game show called The Running Man. And in The Running Man, there are 3 runners, and each of them is given like I want to say 12-hour head start, and then they send hunters after them to kill them. So this version of it has Ben Richards as a family man, and again, I've rewatched the 1987 version recently just to kind of do a little comparison. I will admit I have not read the novel, but you know, in the 1987 version, his background is a little more questionable, so I feel like they are trying to make him an even more relatable protagonist in this. So he's a family man, you know, he does the right thing, but he cannot catch a break, and his daughter is sick, and so as a last resort, he goes to the, you know, government-run media company to try and audition to be on a game show, and they say he is the angriest man they've ever met, and as a byproduct, they want him to be on The Running Man. Now, I gotta say, this is where casting started to weigh things down. So Glenn Powell stars as Ben Richards, who is our protagonist, and Glenn Powell as the angriest man ever, I just didn't buy it, you know? I feel like he was generally able to sell the action part of it, but not the acting, and that is obviously such an important part of a film. So Glenn Powell plays Ben Richards. He ends up on the show, and then the film follows, the course of him trying to win this contest by staying alive. And I think one of the things that worked well about this version, and maybe it's just the timing of when it's coming out, is, the authoritarian police state part of it, and the like constant surveillance, and what can you trust, what's actually real versus what's being broadcast and generated and all that type of things. Josh Brolin plays the head of the network or something along those lines. I don't know if it's the network, but he's definitely the producer of the show. He's this smarmy know-it-all media executive who is used to getting what he wants, and he does it so well. Like, I was like, that's a perfect casting moment. You know, you've also got Coleman Domingo as the host of the game show. You've got folks like William H. Macy, Lee Pace, Michael Cera, Amelia Jones, Daniel Ezra, Jamie Lawson, Katie O'Brien, Sean Hayes. It's a good cast. The problem is that literally, except for I think one scene, the Ben Richards character is in all of it. And so you need a protagonist who can fit into this world and actually sell being angry. And I was just like, I'm not buying it. Even he's smiling a lot. And I'm like, I don't feel like you'd be smiling a lot in these situations. I think the other challenge of this film is that it was not willing to make Glenn Powell not hot, for lack of a better word. This is a character whose literal life depends on being able to be incognito, right? Because part of the conceit of this game show is community or audience participation, and that if you successfully report the contestant, a sighting of the contestant, you win money. And in a society where money is so scarce and like resources are so scarce, of course everyone's going to report you, right? So this character's life depends on being able to disguise himself, right? And he does disguise himself at points, and yet the film is like, no, throw a mustache on him, but like not too much of a mustache, because we still have to see Glenn Powell's quote beautiful face. I'm like, this is not selling this to me. I need you to commit fully to the stakes of the world you're in. If every other part of it is supporting that except for the lead actor's like face, what are you doing here? So I was pretty frustrated by that. Again, I think Glenn Powell is like a fine actor. I've yet to see him in anything that I'm like, oh yeah, you blew me away, dude. I think he is. I think Top Gun Maverick is probably a good example of, I think he was really well cast in that. Even Twisters, I think, made sense for him. But there was something about the depth of emotions that he needed to convey here that I don't think he did a good job selling, which is a shame because, like, I love Edgar Wright, and I think as a story, sadly, The Running Man is still relevant. It's like the lengths people will go to in order to, make ends meet. And then there's the other component of like the lengths people will go to gain fame, which I don't think is as much the theme they're exploring here, but it's still something I think our current society is dealing with. But yeah, I wanted to like this movie. I really wanted to like it. I don't think it's like the worst thing I've ever seen. It was watchable, but I'm not running out to go, hey, you should see this new iteration of The Running Man. In fact, I kind of enjoyed rewatching the original one first. I think the other thing is, even though at the time that one was set X amount in the future. And I do think they did a really good job in this 2025 version of building a future that looks like ours plussed up however long, for better and for worse, with the technology, like the cars, for example, the way they drive, all that stuff. It made sense. Again, this is why I'm just so disappointed. Like, it didn't click for me. Yeah, I rewatching the 1987 one, I can't believe I'm saying this, but and I know from my understanding is also not the most faithful adaptation, and I don't know if it does as good of a job conveying some of the deeper themes, but I do think that Arnold Schwarzenegger makes sense in this lead role. Like, even though he's not supposed to be the angriest man and, the angriest man they've ever met, he still does a much better job of selling the anger components of it. With all that being said, it's a fine film. It's not the worst thing I've seen, but it could have been so much more. And I know Edgar Wright has wanted to make this for a long time. And so I'm just like, I'm kind of bummed that this is not better than it is. And I don't know if Glenn Powell's audition was, so much different and he was like, yeah, I see this for him, or this is what Edgar Wright actually envisioned when he came to that, or there was some sort of, star power requirement. But the main character of the film didn't sell the film to me. And it's a shame because, again, the rest of it is all there. It's just he does not work in this for me. So I'm going to give this a 3.4 out of 5. The other film I have this week is Now You See Me, Now You Don't, which I think people are all referring to as Now You 3 Me, which honestly feels like a better title. This is the third film in the Now You See Me franchise. I know I have seen the first two films. If you asked me to remember anything about them, this is one of those scenarios where I'm like, I got nothing. But this third one sees the return of all the major cast. It's got Jesse Eisenberg, Woody Harrelson, Dave Franco, Isla Fisher, and it also has Lizzie Kapp. They all play magicians who are criminals but do-gooders with their crime, which is, okay, whatever, fine. This time around, they are joined by a new generation of magicians, played by Justice Smith, Dominic Sessa, and Ariana Greenblatt. And the thing that they are ultimately tasked with is robbing Rosamund Pike, who is a diamond miner. And I gotta say, Rosamund Pike is doing a truly unhinged South African accent here. And I'm like, could we not have gotten a South African actress to do this? Or like, what's going on here? I'm not fully sure. It was very distracting. So this is my thing about Now You See Me, Now You Don't. The good thing is, if you're like me, if you have seen the first two and don't remember anything, you don't really need to catch up. Like, literally the first 5 minutes of the film are like, hey, we know you don't remember this. We're going to give you an exposition explanation, which, okay, fine, whatever. Like, I don't love that as a conceit, but I also was not going to go back and watch the first two. If you've never seen the films before, honestly, you could probably drop in. They tell you enough about it to deal with it. My thing about all of these films is that the challenge is, the thing about seeing magic in real life is that there's a suspension of disbelief, right? You know at the back of your brain that they're accomplishing this somehow and they have practically pulled this off, right, in front of you. The challenge with seeing something magic-based, or like, not actual magic fantasy, but literal like performance magic-based on screen, is that for me at least, the movie magic gets in the way where I'm like, well, I know you are actually doing 50 things that make this impossible to do in real life. Now, I could be wrong. I am not a performance magician. I'm not a member of the Alliance of Magicians. So I don't actually know how feasible some of these tricks are, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of them are not. And so it takes some of the fun out of it for me because I'm like, look, again, if you were seeing a performance in real life, you'd be like, I have seen the thing done. I know that I am being tricked somehow, but I almost don't care because I am so entertained. Versus this where I'm like, well, I know you couldn't do this. Like, this is not possible. And it's a ridiculous thing to say because in plenty of movies, if not every movie, things are being done that require your suspension of disbelief. That is what the movies are, right? But because it is using a plot device that is so reliant upon this thing, the joy and the surprise of it gets taken out of it for me, and I get caught up in kind of the technical part of it. So that aside, if you're able to suspend your disbelief, let's talk about some of the other parts of this film. This is gibberish. The movie is absolute gibberish. It's fine and fun to see I'll call them the elder magicians in this together, but I don't know what's going on. I mean, I know what's going on in that they're probably trying to set up some sort of franchise with these new younger folks, but it's just so absurd that they live in a world where there would be a set of young people, and not just a set of young people, sorry. There's a whole fan base for these, made up magicians that show up to their shows and are like, oh, where have they been? I'm like, is there really a world talk about suspending your disbelief? Like, is there really a world we think that this many magicians would have this much of a following? Like, okay, sure. with no disrespect to the younger actors. I think it's mostly a writing issue. They don't come off great. I think they're very one-dimensional, which is a challenge, and I think we're probably willing to be a little more generous with some of the older actors because we've either seen them in a lot more things or we've already seen them in this franchise. Like Woody Harrelson, I'm not saying he's phoning it in, but he's pretty much being Woody Harrelson in this, and I'm like, that's fine, because I like Woody Harrelson. I don't think anybody is really stretching their acting chops a ton here, which is, again, fine. This is supposed to be mindless entertainment at the end of the day, and I don't want to, rain on anyone's parade. I think there are going to be plenty of people who want to relax their brains and will enjoy this. I thought it was fine. I think if it had been even more campy and ridiculous, I would have enjoyed it more. It's coming back to me now a little bit, but I recall, I think Daniel Radcliffe is in the second one, and he plays this utterly absurd character in a way that maybe Rosamund Pike was going for, but it worked for him and it didn't work for her. And again, I know everyone is a good actor at the end of the day, or at least a decent actor. I blame most of this on the script and directing, etc. Because, look, if I was handed a paycheck for doing this too, I would do it. I wouldn't say no to this, but as an audience member who has to hand over a portion of your paycheck in order to go see this film, this is not a strong recommend. If you're a fan of the franchise, great, have fun. I think it's going to be maybe the weakest of the three, but still in line with all of them, and so you'll get what you were looking for. If you are new to the franchise, don't start here, first of all. But second of all, I don't know if you need to go here. You could do 1 and 2 and probably be fine. I get the sense that they're going to want there to be a 4, and I don't know what ridiculous title we'll give it, but again, now you 3 me, such a missed opportunity. It was to me, again, with the knowing that the movie magic is making up for a lot of this. With the absolutely gibberish plot, the mediocre at best dialogue, it was just not particularly for me. I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 5. Again, it's not the worst thing I've seen, but that shouldn't be the bar through which you see movies. Every movie I go into, I'm like, I hope this is the best thing I've ever seen. Even if I have a sense it might not be. Gave it a chance. Not really for me. 3.5 out of 5.